Assalamu alaikum. You're watching PTV World and I'm Faisal Rahman with the special transmission on this very important OIC conference that is being held in Islamabad. And as we all know, the main reason is about the Afghan crisis. So this is in fact the largest gathering after the 15th of August when the Taliban they took over the regime in Afghanistan. Now, as we all know, the winter has approached. There are a lot of crises, whether we talk about the economic upset that is there or we talk about the banking collapse. There is lack of flow of money. So the government in Afghanistan currently can't even pay the salaries of the government employees. And having said that, the crisis is so huge that it is believed that 60% of the total population of Afghanistan is at the verge of almost starvation. There is no medical facilities as such, and the people are really depending on the neighboring countries such as Pakistan and Iran perhaps, and in the northern side, the CS countries as well. But having said that, now the issue is so huge that Pakistan in fact took the initiative and called the OIC members to attend this very important summit so that this particular issue could be taken care of. As we all know, the Western world isn't supporting as such. The Americans, they have frozen their 9.5 billion US dollars, and that was much needed for the revival of their economy. And so the case is from a lot of European countries as well. In fact, they initially pledged for help, but nothing has arrived so far. As we will be in fact continuing this transmission for the next 3 days till Sunday. So this is the beginning in fact, and let us show you a report that our production team has prepared. And after that, I'll introduce you to our panelist and we'll start the conversation.
A deepening humanitarian quandary of Afghanistan reflects the flawed approach of international community towards Afghanistan with tragic consequences. The crumbling healthcare system, economic meltdown of aid-dependent economy, pandemic, food insecurity exacerbated by drought and harsh winter all combined to create a perfect storm for killing more Afghans than bullets. Raising further alarm, the UN envoy for Afghanistan, Deborah Loynes, said an estimated 60% of Afghanistan's 38 million people are facing crisis level of hunger in a food emergency that will likely worsen over the winter.
Now is not the time to turn away from the Afghan people. We must find ways to prevent an imminent humanitarian catastrophe and the terrible loss of life that could happen over the winter.
According to UNICEF, around 3.2 million Afghan children are acutely malnourished and 1.1 million children are at risk of dying because of severe acute malnutrition unless we intervene with treatment. Explaining the country's worst humanitarian disaster, Abdullah Al-Dardari, the resident representative of the UNDP in Afghanistan, some 23 million people are in desperate need of food. The $20 billion economy could shrink by $4 billion or more, and 97% of the 38 million population are at risk of sinking into poverty. As an emphatic gesture, Pakistan has announced $28 million medical, food and other humanitarian assistance for Afghanistan, while also authorizing the transport of food aid from India through Pakistan to Afghanistan. The ensuing catastrophe is preventable as releasing the frozen funds, the Afghan Central Bank's $9 billion reserves, most of which are held in the US, would alleviate the current humanitarian crisis. UNICEF official Samantha Mort noted that this is not time for political brinkmanship. People in Afghanistan are dying and they need our support. Humanitarian aid is the last expression of human solidarity.
And now to talk about it, let me introduce you to our panelists. We have with us in our studio on my right is Ma'am Naela Chohan. She is a former ambassador, senior diplomat. Ma'am, thank you so much for your time. And we also have Lieutenant General retired Talit Masood Saab, who's a senior analyst. Sir, thank you so much, Jalsa, for your time as well. And on Skype, we have with us from Germany, Helga Zepp Laroche. She's the founder of Schiller Institute. Thank you so much, Helga Zepp, for your time as well. Pleasure to have you on the show. But let me start off from you, Jalsa, if you allow me, sir. Sir, OIC's extraordinary meeting on Afghanistan, great initiative by a country like Pakistan. Obviously, we expect a lot to be done. Hopes and expectations versus the reality, sir. Now, since we all know the kind of influence the United States of America has on certain Gulf countries, as well as in general on the Muslim countries, sir, if they are not willing, if they're not ready to release a sum of, let's say, 9.5 billion, which is urgently needed in Afghanistan. This is primarily about the food security, about the shortage of medicine. It's about the harsh winter. And as you heard, that 3.2 million children are practically starving. 1.1 million could die during this time period if the help doesn't arrive on time. So, Jalsab, do you think the Muslim Ummah, as we say, is in a position to take a decision in favor of the current regime against the will and the wish of the Americans?
Well, I think the Americans should be ashamed of themselves, really. I mean, I'm talking of the government in the sense that, look, I mean, what they have done by having this sort of an embargo, what they are denying the poor people of Afghanistan, the children of Afghanistan, the women of Afghanistan, and those men who are really more or less starving, you know. So they want 60%, or then it will get even worse, and a time would come then when you would find that 90% of the Afghans are without any food and without any shelter. So I think I just cannot understand that America, which genuinely has at times been extremely a great benefactor and has been giving assistance, to one of the most sort of deserving sort of places, now imposes a restriction and tries to punish the poor people of Afghanistan for, because the government is that of Taliban. Well, I mean, they were negotiating with the Taliban. There was no reason why on earth they should have really imposed this penalty. But having said that, I think this the question that you have posed to me is genuinely, I think Pakistan is doing a great job in the sense that it is assembling and trying to put the full weight of the Islamic countries so that, the voice is heard more effectively around the world, because the world is at the moment not much pushed about Afghanistan. And I think then there is also a possibility that the Muslim countries or the Islamic group will also probably contribute in a way that at least it could elevate the immediate and look after the immediate needs of the Afghans. And this is what they should be doing, that there should be an emergency fund, I think, that they have to raise. If they would raise that emergency fund and that is given to these people, and then it is also seen that the food supplies and other things which are essential for their survival, and I think they also need some clothing, because the winter is so severe in Afghanistan. So I think I feel that this was a good move on the part of Pakistan to have assembled the Muslim countries, because just Pakistan and Iran raising their voice is not enough.
Ma'am, your take on the same point, in fact.
Yes, I totally agree with our wise senior General Sahib. It is very true. It is a very complex situation in Afghanistan. Humanitarian issue is the primary issue at this moment.
Correct.
But in Afghanistan, it's, I would say 4 dimensions of the problem, like you alluded to in your introduction as well, that there's an economic crisis, there's a financial crisis, there's a social crisis, and of course the political one. Mm-hmm. Put them all together. And Pakistan from the day one said that we would have a regional approach to it as far as the recognition of the Taliban is concerned. And until that is done, the Western countries are unlikely to give their financial or economic support to Afghanistan. So now politics and economics have got intermingled. Mm-hmm. And Pakistan is pursuing its approach to put the regional countries and then the Islamic countries together to find a solution pending establishment of a formal government in Afghanistan. Because at this moment it is an interim government, and it is difficult for the rest of the world to recognize an interim government, and until they recognize it,
This
they're
is a very
unlikely
good-
to
very good
give
point.
their assistance to them.
When you say it's an interim government, people do not even use the word government. They say it's
Yeah,
a regime.
exactly. I
But
agree.
the point is, ma'am, do you think that this particular summit that is being held in Islamabad, they'll be able to come up with some sort of a solution where the Western world in particular, because they matter and they matter the most, they'll be able to say, let's suppose that this current regime is acceptable, but these are the conditions. Because whatever they could have done, they have been doing it actually. They have got so much happening in Afghanistan, whether you talk about the terrorism activities by the non-state actors, or perhaps the financial crunch they are going through, lack of food security, and ma'am, people are practically living on the roads. Jalal Sahab, I was reading an article in which they stated that 20,000 Hazara people are living in the outskirts of only Kabul. And imagine the severe weather you're talking about. It's unbelievable. You can't live in a tent in that kind of weather, ma'am.
Not everybody has a tent even, so the conditions are really dire there. I agree with you. I'm sorry I used the word regime, but government, but it's basically an arrangement, I would say. We haven't really cooked up a term for it yet. But the thing is that will OIC foreign ministers meeting come up with a solution? It is difficult to predict because the OIC, as you know, comprises different countries from different regions which have different priorities. So it is Pakistan's earnest hope that as part of the Ummah, we can come up with a solution which is to save the lives in Afghanistan. Because that
primarily
is
it's a humanitarian crisis,
Exactly,
ma'am. And one has
exactly.
to take certain steps where people could be saved. At the end of the day, this is exactly like that. I still remember when as a kid, when the Soviet Union, they invaded Afghanistan, and there were a lot of people who migrated to Pakistan. And at the Eid time, I remember during that particular time period when Qurbani was being done, a lot of planes used to come from Saudi Arabia and they would bring in meat for these people. So this is what we have seen during those crises, but currently it's more or less, even it's worse right now, but nothing is being done. But let's see what Ms. Helga Zepp has to share with us. Now, ma'am, looking at the current Afghan crisis and the summit that Pakistan is having in Islamabad, now your take, I mean, what sort of hope do you have about the Afghan people that, yes, there is going to be some sort of help in terms of cash and kind, both, ma'am?
Well, first of all, I think it's extremely important what Pakistan is doing right now by hosting the summit. I have a terrible echo here. By Pakistan taking the leadership in a situation where the West has morally completely failed. I mean, this is a moral bankruptcy declaration because this is not a crisis which was not foreseeable because, you know, already 1 week after the withdrawal of the US and NATO troops from Afghanistan, it was clear that the country was in a complete shambles. And now almost 4 months have passed since. And, you know, it is clear that more than 90% of the people are in danger of dying of hunger, of the cold in the freezing winter. And this has been known in the West for, you know, several months. But in the news, Afghanistan has completely disappeared from the Western media. So I think this conference is a real chance to show who is the moral superior factor in the situation. And I'm so ashamed that the West is not capable of, I mean, the money which is being withheld by the US Treasury and European banks, this money belongs to the Afghan people, and we are in a campaign right now with the Schiller Institute, both in the United States and in Western Europe, to demand that these monies be unfrozen right away. But I actually would like to mention something which is a little bit more hopeful element. I mean, I have called for Operation Ibn Sina. Ibn Sina was probably the most famous doctor in the history of mankind, the most famous physician. He lived about 1,000 years ago. And right now, to build a modern health system in Afghanistan would be, that would be the beginning of overcoming not only the humanitarian crisis, but at the same time also starting a real economic development. And to give that the name of Ibn Sina, it would bring forward, and I would actually hope that the OIC countries, being the Islamic countries of the world, that they would adopt Operation Ibn Sina if they all would work together, make Ibn Sina the synonym for not only saving the Afghan people right now in this incredible humanitarian crisis, but all working together to build up economically this country, which has a very proud history. It was once known, this whole region, as the land of 1,000 cities. Ibn Sina is not just a physician, but he was one of the great universal thinkers who contributed a lot to philosophy and many areas of knowledge. So I think this is a moment where history can be shaped in a positive way. So I think the West has failed, and now hopefully the Islamic countries, together with the neighbor countries of Afghanistan, can step in. And this is, I mean, it's unbelievable what is happening. I mean, that the world would know such a humanitarian tragedy and not act. I think this is a point people have to really think. What does that mean about the moral condition of the world? I think the Operation Ibn Sina could be a tremendous change in the situation.
Now, Jalsa very rightly pointed out. I mean, she's some couple of very interesting points that the lady has raised. First of all, sir, when we talk about the current Afghan crisis, they are beyond imagination, to be very honest, because just imagine there is no food, there is no money, harsh weather, and on top, nobody is ready to support you. So the Americans, they have always, championed the statement that we will liberate countries, and mostly they have tried to liberate the Muslim countries, and they ended up creating the worst chaos there. You talk about Syria, you talk about Iraq, Afghanistan, and so you exactly know what I'm talking about. So perhaps, if they were there to liberate, and they ended up spending 2.2 trillion according to them, and interestingly, only a few families, in fact, eventually benefited from these. But the point now is that if the Americans are not willing to accept the regime of the Taliban, perhaps they are trying to put pressure on them, and they want to talk to them from a position of strength. Are they actually getting that position of strength, or do you believe that without the support of the West, the OIC, and along with certain other countries like Chinese perhaps, or the Russians, they can look after the issue to a certain extent, sir?
No, I think it's very important that the West, and especially the US, must recognize, firstly, the level of catastrophe that is taking place in Afghanistan. They must help Afghanistan because they owe it to them. Because you see, the thing is that they invaded Afghanistan, and that by itself is they should make them very guilty conscious of it, because it was not the fault of the Afghan people. Yeah, Osama bin Laden was there, but Osama bin Laden's presence doesn't mean that 220 million or 23 million people should suffer so much for so many years.
And once they believe that they have been, successful in eliminating Al-Qaeda and killing Osama bin Laden. It's been over 10 years now.
Yeah, and if that was the measure of their success, and what about the other failures that have happened in Afghanistan and because of their policies? So I am convinced that unless America changes its policy, the Western countries will also be very hesitant in changing their policy towards Afghanistan. So I think at least they should allow the European countries to sort of contribute and make some sort of a difference in what is happening. Now, one thing is good, that they are at least channeling something through these aid agencies and so on. But this is no substitute for giving to the government. You have to give it to the government. As far as the quality of governance is concerned, well, you can put pressure. That may be good for the people of Afghanistan as well. But this does not mean that it should be so conditional that, the very people for whom you are trying to advocate, they themselves are suffering so much. And then I think it's extremely important for the Islamic countries to sort of really use their influence, whatever little influence they have over the Western countries and especially America. And collectively, if they sort of really raise their voice, I think it will have much
But
better.
the question is, perhaps only those countries can help who are in a position to help.
Yeah, like Saudi Arabia
or
UAE and all.
G6 countries, Gulf countries
yeah.
in particular. But sir, we all know the kind of pressure the Americans have on them, sir. I remember that Saudi Arabia and UAE, they were the first two countries along with Pakistan to accept the regime of the Taliban at that time. But currently, sir, we haven't heard much from them. Do you think they'll be able to deliver? To what extent, if so?
No, I think, the same logic that we are applying to Americans, we also should apply to the Muslim countries, irrespective of the fact, even Pakistan is not happy with all the policies that the Taliban are pursuing. And neither is Iran, neither is China, and neither is Russia. So that does not mean that they are not really prepared to support the people of Afghanistan. And they don't want the poor people of Afghanistan to suffer. And because you see, it is not only that the people of Afghanistan are suffering and Afghanistan is suffering, but it has very serious consequences for the entire region. And we have gone through that experience, that when Afghanistan is in trouble, the whole world is in trouble. But more so, the neighboring countries are in trouble.
They suffer the most.
And we have already seen what is happening now in Pakistan. Firstly, we are getting a flood of refugees in Iran and Pakistan. Then at the same time, we are also getting, Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan and this, that and the other are getting activated. What does that mean? That means it is becoming a playground for all these forces which are inimical to, and then, there will be also a lot of drug smuggling and drug mafias all becoming very, very strong.
And very
so
active.
I think that cycle which was existing in the past will be repeated.
Ma'am, now this is what suits the West, doesn't it? That turmoil in Afghanistan, the Indians very categorically believe that if the situation remains fluid in Afghanistan, that suits us, because that is going to affect Pakistan in a negative way. This is their policy, and openly they admit that. Whether you talk about their external affairs minister, or you talk about Mr. Rajnath Singh, the defense minister, or even the Prime Minister Modi. So A. Secondly, ma'am, when you talk about the regional countries or the region getting affected, this definitely is going to affect OBOR, BRI, CPEC and all, and that again suits the Americans. So the equation pretty much is tilted towards them, isn't it?
I wouldn't say the situation is tilted towards them, but I agree with you that there is an agenda there of having controlled chaos. Indians are definitely not interested in having that kind of stability in Afghanistan, and so are the Americans, because if they were interested in real peace and stability in that country, they wouldn't have left in the haste that they did.
Absolutely.
So that we are not going to debate. What we are going to debate is how to deal with the situation that we are confronted with. And it is in the, on the priority of the immediate neighbors like Pakistan, Iran, and the Central Asian republics, also China and Russia and the Gulf countries, to find solution to this problem, because humanitarian issue is of course the primary, but then it spills over into other problems that can affect our own stability. So it is imperative that we find solution which is acceptable to the Afghans, because Afghans never like to take dictates. It has to be Afghan owned and Afghan led, but we have to encourage them and help them. So step one is the humanitarian, and then encourage them to have political stability, which would then facilitate other, solution of other problems.
Ma'am, when you say Afghan-led and Afghan-owned, don't you think this regime is actually Afghan-owned and Afghan-led? Because Taliban, they were constantly putting pressure on the Americans, if you remember, ma'am. And eventually, the talks, they took place in Doha. Certain countries took the initiative. Pakistan did its level best to engage the Americans and the Taliban. And eventually, this was a solution. But nobody expected that the Americans will just run away one fine night and eventually end up blaming Pakistan and making us the scapegoat, because it was their failure, not ours, ma'am. 2.2 trillion is not a joke. If they have spent that kind of money and eventually handed over the Taliban regime to the Taliban regime after 20 years and after killing so many people, what is that supposed to mean?
No, I agree with you. But the point is that when I'm saying Afghan-led and Afghan-owned, I'm basically talking about an inclusive decision-making process. Of course, Talibans are Afghans, but within Talibans also there are groupings.
Various factions.
Various factions. So that fragmentation in that polity itself is challenging for the rest of the world to deal with, particularly the Afghans themselves. But if they come up with some inclusive solution where all Afghans are represented, I mean ethnicities.
The Tajiks, the Uzbeks,
yes.
the Pashtuns, they should have their own,
They should have their voice in the decision-making process. That's when it would be really Afghan-led and Afghan-owned, because then it's all Afghans. It's not just a particular group that's leading. And that particular group has to understand the importance of inclusivity as in representation of all ethnicities.
Now, very interesting point. Now, let me take this debate to the lady in Germany. Ms. Halkan, now a couple of important points. One is when Mr. Hamid Karzai was brought in, nobody knew him. And he was there for 2 terms because he was the blue-eyed boy of the Americans. Certainly, when he made certain remarks and he was pretty open, then there was this, I would say, change as far as the leadership is concerned. Then 2 terms were given to Mr. Ashraf Ghani, who ended up running away, leaving the Afghan people. And interesting part was that in every election, it was believed that they were rigged, and they were so close that initially Abdullah was made, the foreign minister, and later on again, since he was also running for the campaign of the presidentship, he said, well, I'm the president, and ended up becoming the CEO. And again, then in the second term, he was again given another responsibility. Now, the point is, if that is acceptable to